All this that I had to suffer in England, all this whiteness that I had to acquire, all this politeness coming out of my mouth, you know, there would have been a kind of sense of revenge, you see.
I think it struck a nerve about the superiority of the British male and their vulnerability at a time of war and so on. They really couldn't handle the idea that they weren't superior. And all of these things came together in this very, very, very ugly episode, one of the ugliest episodes, I think, in the history of British sport.
In the 19th round, the mob ran riot.
People were pushed to one side, people were trampled, people were lying on the ground, people walking all over them. I mean, who knows what happened? Molineaux was trapped in a corner and one of his hands was broken. It must have been a terrifying experience.
The ring invasion gave Cribb vital breathing space, and it left Molineaux with a broken hand. With his jaw shattered and 6 ribs broken, he fought on for round after round. It was hopeless. And in the 40th, the English crowd got the result they so badly wanted.
The black strength forsook him. He had no chance to win. He fought like a brave fellow, but was forced to get in.
This day, the capabilities displayed by Molineaux electrified all the best judges in the prize ring. His contest with Cribb will be long remembered in the sporting world. And it will not be forgotten, if justice holds the scale, that it was his colour alone that prevented him from becoming the hero of that fight.
It is one of those defining moments for sport. Whether the country was ready to have a black champion is impossible to know. Your gut feeling in reading everything is no, they weren't.
It must have been a shattering blow to Richmond to lose in those circumstances. I've no doubt he thought of the title as being his, if you know what I mean, although Molineaux was the man who was out there.
To Mr. Thomas Cribb, 20th of December, 1810. Sir, our friends think that last Tuesday we should have won the battle. We therefore challenge you to a second meeting at any time, for such a sum as the gentlemen who place confidence in you may be pleased to arrange. I trust that our being of a different color will not in any way operate to our prejudice. Signed, Bill Richmond and Tom Molineaux.
But the right to challenge Cribb a second time didn't come cheap. As Molineaux's backer, Bill was required to put up a purse of 600 guineas. Cribb himself had little stomach for another fight. The one-time coal heaver was now a wealthy man, and he'd been badly shaken by Molineaux. But England expected every man to do his duty. The country's top athletes were drafted in to ensure Cribb couldn't lose the return contest. Confined to a secret training camp, Cribb was subjected to bodily purges and the latest dietary fads. His fists were soaked in vinegar. All contact with women was forbidden. But back in London, Molineaux was having himself a ball.
He was a tremendous celebrity. He was as well known as Wellington and Napoleon. And it certainly went to his head. Also, the opportunities for going off the rails were there.
With togs of the best fashion and quality, the man of colour soon became a blade of the first magnitude. The cash flowed in fast upon him. Pleasure was the order of the day with him, and the stews of the metropolis tended to undermine his manhood.
While Molineaux burned his candle at both ends, the gossip columns relished each new excess.
Richmond was extremely unhappy and frustrated and to the point of rage at the way that Molineaux behaved, because Richmond was sure that Molineaux could beat Cribb if he would really train and really go at it. And here was this great, talented, splendid fighter throwing it away.
The rematch was fixed for September 1811, and as Molineaux's flesh grew weaker, Cribb grew stronger. The big fight was over before it had even begun. Cribb won easily. The nation's pride was secure.
Richmond has always been a most eloquent and amusing fellow, but he was never known to be so deficient in his eloquence as when Molineaux experienced defeat.
Bill's dreams of championship glory were in tatters. Molineaux had failed him.
Bill Richmond was fairly unforgiving. He had his status to maintain. I don't think that he actually had the time for Tom Molineaux. Certainly not the time to extend him further lines of credit. It became an issue of great bitterness between them, and I'm not sure if he was that concerned about Molineaux's fate.
Molineaux had been living off Bill's cash for months. Now it was time for Bill to call in his debts.
It's a tragedy for Molineaux, this breakdown in their relationship. His world literally falls apart at this stage. It must have been an extraordinary hell, and a lonely one as well.
Richmond and Molineaux never spoke again. Without Bill's support, Tom was soon checking into the debtor's jail on Horsemonger's Lane. On his release, the big man struggled on, eking out a living in carnival sideshows and traveling fairs. But the bottle had taken over, and in the year of 1818, Molineaux's liver finally gave up on him. He was 38 years old. Bill now knew he would never produce a black champion. The glory days were over. The big boxing crowds were drifting away, and a new mood was taking hold in the country.
What you'd find are arrests being made, and particularly from the 1830s. The courts really begin to do their best to throw the book at prize fighters. It would appear to be an attempt to domesticate the working class so that it will be aware of the fact that it has got to answer the factory bell, and it's got to do this 5-6 days a week.
Bill's gym was pulled down to make way for the construction of Nelson's Column and Trafalgar Square. But Bill's achievements were not forgotten. He'd lit up the world of prize fighting, both in and outside the ring, for 20 years. And in 1821, at the age of 58, Bill was formally honored at the coronation celebrations of King George IV.
It's a real fairy story, because what you see is someone who starts as a slave, and by his own enterprise and immense courage, there he is, receiving one of the highest honors he could get. He's absolutely made it.
I mean, he would have been immensely proud. You can imagine what he wore that day, you know. He would have polished his buttons for days on end, you know, until he could see his black face in it. It would have been a moment of pride for him. Now imagine, only boxing could have taken him that way.
Next, an animated short film, Stonehouse Reunion.